Thank you. I asked Marissa to be fulsome rather than factual, and she did a good job, I think. Thank you all very much. It's an act of ecumenical grace for South Carolinians to allow a Tennessean to come. So we're very grateful. We're still fighting over Andrew Jackson. We want him. Uh, y'all wanted him at first, but then they got a little rough there in the winter of 1832. But this is about the only room in America where you can make an 1832 joke and everyone gets it. So give yourself a hand for that. Yeah. Or not. Usually at this hour, I'm at assisted living facilities. Right between Murder, She Wrote and Jeopardy. They slot me in. So this is like American Bandstand. I'm hugely grateful. That was a generous introduction. I'm reminded, I guess it was 15 years ago now. I was at the Washington Mall at the National Book Festival. And I was on my way at that point to give my talk about Andrew Jackson. And a woman ran up to me, which doesn't happen enough, or ever, actually. And those who could run up to me can't run anymore. So that's the essence of tragedy. But I was on my way, and this woman comes up. She says, "Oh my God, it's you." And I said, "Yes, existentially speaking, that's hard to argue with." And as I said, I live in Tennessee, so I have to leave the state to use existential as an adverb. So y'all don't get cocky. But she said, "Your books have meant so much to me. My family loves them. Will you wait right here? I'm going to go buy your new book and have you sign it." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And hand to God, she brought back John Grisham's later. Oh, so whenever I think I'm the most distinguished anything, I remind myself that somewhere in America there is a woman with a forged copy of The Runaway Jury, right? I signed it. If you'll indulge me, there's a second part of that story, which is also true. At that point, I was writing a biography of George Herbert Walker Bush. It was a great honor. He threw open the doors. He gave me his diaries. It took me 17 years. It was supposed to be posthumous, but the son of a bitch wouldn't die. I'd bring it up. Oh my God, there's an Abraham Lincoln section too. I see. Oh, y'all watch out. I'd bring it up. I'd say, "Mr. President, I got to wait till you die." He said, "Not going to do it." Dana Carvey once said the key to doing the old man's voice was Mr. Rogers trying to be John Wayne. It's a perfect description. But I was on my way to Maine to see the Bushes. And Bush World was like a WASP Disneyland, right? The Oak Ridge Boys would be playing golf with Gorbachev. Billy Graham would be trying to make the Keurig work. I mean, it was a very strange world. But for some reason, it was just the three of us at lunch the day after I was mistaken for John Grisham. And I told the story. And I will confess to you, it was an entirely transparent attempt to get either the former president or the former first lady to say, "Oh, you're so much more important than John Grisham," right? That's what I wanted. So I had cast the fly out on the water. And, and Barbara Bush looks across the table and says, "Well, how do you think poor John Grisham would feel? He's a very handsome man." So it was a rough weekend. I am honored to be with you. I'll make my comments about Ben Ziegler, who is wearing his David McCullough costume today. He dyes his hair white now to do that in a moment. I'm delighted you all are here. I salute what Charleston and what South Carolina are doing. There's a difference between celebration and commemoration. And this is not a particularly celebratory moment in American public life. Even if you're on the incumbent administration side, part of the reason you're on the incumbent administration side is because you like the fight, right? You like to feel as though you are in a political arena in which we don't see each other as rivals and opponents, which is fine. That's what we're supposed to do. But we see each other as enemies. You can negotiate with rivals and opponents. You can have a match with rivals and opponents, reach a result, respect the result, and then do it all again. Right? That's what the Constitution creates in terms of politics. It's not supposed to be the Hobbesian war of all against all. And so, even if you're very happy with what's unfolding in the country, and I'd like to meet you if you are, um, um, and I promise I'm not going to make a reflecting pool joke, but I, I'm not sure I can keep that promise. So bear with me if we come to that. Um, and if you're on the other side, which is where 51% of the country at least is, you're not really in a mood to celebrate. But we can be in a humor too, and I would even argue that we have a duty to commemorate what unfolded in Philadelphia 250 years ago. Because to commemorate is an act of remembrance. And remembrance is not a passive activity. And I say this as I'm a boringly heterosexual white Southern male Episcopalian, right? There's 6 of us left. And as I look around, the other 5 are here. It's okay. We'll go down to Ben Silver and get the prayer book. It'll be great, Madras. Where remembrance is an act of agency. When Moses said to the people of Israel in his final song, "Remember the days of old, remember the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will tell thee, thy elders, and they will show thee." He was talking about revivifying the past, not looking back in nostalgia, not looking back in sentiment, but recovering an act of rescue and redemption. The most obeyed commandment, arguably in human history, is do this in remembrance of me. And the act of this, the sacrament in the Christian tradition, as in other traditions, is not to make something old and to look at it because it's old, but to make something new. And that's what history can do. And my firm belief is that, as Winston Churchill said, you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing once we have exhausted every other possibility, right? It's absolutely right. And I'm now going to tell you the one story you will remember that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but is the only thing you'll remember from our time together. There's a wonderful story about Winston Churchill in the men's room of the House of Commons one day. And he's standing at the trough, and Clement Attlee, the Labor socialist prime minister, comes in and stands next to Churchill. And Churchill steps away. And Attlee looks at him and says, "Winston, are you feeling standoffish today?" And Churchill says, "No, it's just that every time you see something big, you want to nationalize it." Now, no significance, no relevance, nothing. That's just a freebie. We, in extremis, often at the last moment, often in spite of our darker and more selfish impulses, we have in fact done the right thing. And my God, it's been a close call. If I ask you to think about for a moment, over the last 250 years, what's the greatest thing the United States of America ever did? There are a couple of candidates, right? There's declaring independence itself, which helps create fuels a global move toward self-government as opposed to hereditary authority. There's the abolition of human enslavement. But the largest event, arguably in human history, is the Second World War. You just think about George Marshall became chief of staff of the Army on September 1st, 1939. It was the day Hitler invaded Poland. Welcome to the job. The United States Army had 170,000 men in it. By the time 1945 is over, we're north of 10 million. In places like the Charleston shipyard and places all over the country, we reacted to the threat of fascism and tyranny with a remarkable and really unprecedented productive and human investment in the projection of force to achieve a moral end that would have economic and political implications, but which was fundamentally a moral insight. Largest event in human history, an event that ends with the capacity in August of 1945 for the world to destroy itself. Trivia question. When did we declare war on Adolf Hitler? We did finally. It was 5 days after Pearl Harbor. All right. So Japanese attack us on December 7th. FDR goes to Congress on the 8th. The American people in their righteous might shall win through to absolute victory. He doesn't declare war on Germany. Why? Because Germany hadn't declared war on us. People say, oh, well, of course it was going to happen because of the tripartite pact. And did Hitler pay a lot of attention to treaties? We didn't know. FDR didn't know what was going to happen. Those 5 days were the longest 5 days in Winston Churchill's life because he didn't know if he was going to continue to have to stand alone against the Third Reich in Europe while we focused on Asia. And finally, in one of the mistakes from which Hitler would never recover, on Thursday, December 11th, he declares war on the United States. We declare war on Germany. And then we do the greatest thing we've ever done. I think it's really important to remember that the greatest thing we ever did, we were dragged into. Not so that you and I, can somehow feel superior to the past, as if, well, if we had been there, we would, of course, in 1940, we would have told Lindbergh, no, we're not going to be isolationist. We shall march forward, because we probably wouldn't have, because we're not any better, but importantly, we're not any worse than the people in the past. And I think that's a vital insight in a season of commemoration. It is a sin to despair. We have come too far. People have bled and died so that you and I could gather in a beautiful place like this to talk about important things in an era where democratic capitalism continues, for all of its imperfections, to create the means for us to live lives of prosperity and purpose. And I, for one, decline to surrender that experiment to cable news and social media algorithms. Or to the algae. I got it. I didn't know when I brought that up before where it was coming, but it worked, right? We are not going to choke on algae. The things we have to do. But I mean it. I mean it. We just, John Lewis, Rosa Parks, the men of Normandy, men, sorry to mention this in South Carolina, of Gettysburg. All right. Andrew Jackson standing against South Carolina that wanted the means of secession 30 years before we had enough time to create what Lincoln would call the mystic chords of memory. The Patriots, who had 30% of the country against them, of the British North America. We didn't even begin united. 25 to 30% of the country, of the colonies, were loyalists. My family were loyalists. They left Massachusetts Bay and went to Nova Scotia. Bad bet. It's like every Southern family that, turned down the opportunity to invest in that brown sugar water. What's it called? Oh, Coca-Cola. Nobody's going to buy that. 30%. 1 out of 3. A couple of the things to just. I'm kind of trying to be Joyce Brothers meets David McCullough here for you, right? I want to give you a couple of things as we go forward to help frame the frame the debate. Only 3 times since the Second World War have 60% of us. So think about it. Look around. On your row, 4 of the people on your row, we're going to say that you were wrong about who you voted for president. That's when we were most united. In 1964, in 1972, and in 1984. President Johnson, President Nixon, and President Reagan all got 59 to 61% of the vote. Every other election was infinitely closer. From 1932 to 2000, don't hold me to these exact numbers, but it's close. The average decisive number, the margin in a presidential election, 1932 to 2000, was 8.5%. Since 2000, it's less than 1%. President Biden would not have been President Biden if a home game at Yankee Stadium, 45,000 votes, had shifted in 2020. Vice President Harris would be President Harris if a home stand at Yankee Stadium, 200,000 votes, had changed. These are not vast margins. And that should be empowering. It does mean that all of us matter. It means that our habits of heart and mind matter. It means that what we have learned again and again in a government based on the will of the people is that the will and whims and character of those people matters, and matters enormously. And this sounds as if I'm just sort of giving you, describing the wallpaper, but sometimes we have to describe the wallpaper. Because what we have learned anew in the last 10 years, 11 years, is that you can't write any law. You can't absolutely legislate your way to order and to liberty and to the fulfillment of that most important sentence ever originally rendered in English, the Declaration of Independence. There's a spirit of the laws. Montesquieu wrote about this. A lot of what's happened in the last 10 years or so, and we've all said, oh my God, how could that happen? Part of it is it happened because no one else, if anyone had thought to do it, they had decided not to. It shows our fragility, but it also shows our agency. It doesn't have to be this way. It's always going to be tense. There's always going to be the struggle. But it is a winnable one if we remember that the point of American democracy is both to win graciously and lose graciously. And if we can't do both, we can't make the system work. This is difficult. It's counterintuitive. Because I don't know about you all, but I much prefer winning. Right? Democracies are about give and take. It's a hell of a lot more fun to take than to give. See second chapter of Genesis. Apple told not to take it. We wanted it. We took it. Mayhem ensues. Right? It's counterintuitive. And let's be honest, what makes civil society and democracy work is our capacity to see each other as neighbors and to practice a kind of love of neighbor. And that's really difficult. If you think about it, there's always a backstory to a commandment, right? If everybody had loved each other in ancient Israel, Jesus would not have had to say, love thy neighbor, right? You don't put up traffic signs if everyone's driving safely. Somebody was having sex with a goat in ancient Israel, or they wouldn't have thought to say, don't do it, right? Ziegler's blood pressure just went way up. And I will say, when I talk about neighbors, I know that you begin to think about Mr. Rogers. So very small story about a very small category called great tweets. It's like French military victories in the 20th century. About a year ago, someone tweeted out that if Doris Kearns Goodwin and Mr. Rogers had had a one-night stand, I would have resulted. Which, yeah, I loved it. Doris was kind of upset. So she learned how to use her phone and she called me. And it popped up and I said, Mom. She said, that's not funny. This is a true story. This is a true story. And I said, why not? She said, I don't mind being your mother, but I don't want to be a floozy. And I said, sweetheart, he picked you up in the C-SPAN bar. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. This is a moral undertaking. America is a moral undertaking. It requires us to judge ourselves by the degree to which we live into that sentence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, or the degree to which we fall from it. And I know where I want our generation to end up. So let's get on it. Thank you.